girls off Reddit who have rejected people. What's the worst way someone has taken it? My sister got followed home by a dude she rejected. He went up to the house and started talking to her kids and telling them he was their new dad. Luckily, real dad came out in his police attire. Put a real quick end to that edit. Want to clear up some confusion. My sister and the real dad are married, not divorced or anything. The guy followed her home from the hospital she works at, where he was a patient under her care. He made a move on her. She said no. There was no relationship between them besides nurse-patient. Well, maybe not in his eyes. I refer to my brother-in-law as my brother, mostly cause I'm too lazy to type it out, but also cause he's been in my life since I was a little kid. Brother was not threatening the man as a cop but instead as a father. He just happened to be getting ready to leave for work at the same time. The guy ended up getting transferred to another hospital to be closer to his family after complications from overdosing. This is a slightly different take, but I turned a guy down for a date and he then posted a long snap story about how much he loves his wife that he had neglected to mention all that time. Cheaters often do stuff like that when they feel guilty for trying to cheat. I had actually heard of a lot of people doing this before, but I'd never had it happen to me, and when it did it was completely devastating. He told me I had to go out with him or he would kill himself. He then said goodbye, very convincingly and emotionally, and turned his phone off, stopped picking up or answering any texts. I knew him from when we went to high school together, and so I actually had his best mates and his dad's phone numbers. I phoned them and sent the screenshots of the messages to them. Absolutely hysterical and worrying that he was in a gutter somewhere. However, it was very quickly discovered by his livid father that he was actually round the mates smoking weed, and he thought that this would at least get him a pity shag. What a complete and utter twat. Edit. Hello. To answer the nationality questions, most of you were half right. I'm half Australian, half English. I have kind of a weird accent from growing up in both countries. When I broke up with my first boyfriend, I was with him for 2.5 years. He went crazy, threatened to kill himself, locked himself in the bathroom, etc. I had his mum calling me every night for a week saying he'd swallowed a load of sleeping pills or locked himself in the bathroom with razor blades, etc. She had the cheek to blame it all on me. Thankfully my mum set them both straight, and the only time I heard from him again was about a year later when he came to the pub I went to every weekend with his new girlfriend to try and make me jealous. Then got jealous when I was talking to a friend who looks like a Viking. Quite pathetic really. I mean, I would get jealous if I saw someone with a Viking friend. We went on one date and I declined a second. A couple of days after that he called me and told me what I had been wearing that day. This went on for a couple of months. I'd literally never see him, but at least 3 times a week he'd know exactly what I wore. When I was a nanny, I was walking around with the baby in the pram and we visited a bookshop. A man in there started talking to me and then asked me out, very kindly, keeping my father's advice in mind about being kind when I have to reject men when they ask me out. I said that was a nice offer, but my boyfriend might not be too keen on it. His response to that was to lean in and try and kiss me. I told him to get the F off me. He then exploded with rage and started screaming in my face. I was saved by the bookstore employee. The man stormed out of the shop. I spent the next few hours shaking like a leaf. What a champion. He was 15 at the time, and although the rejection happened over the phone, he was so irate that he illegally drove a car to the nearest place he knew to where my house was. I'd once told him I'll live near the hospital, and waited there demanding I give him more accurate directions to my house. In retrospect, I probably should have been more terrified than I was. This happened to me once. I gave the guy very clear directions to a house in Florida. I do not live in Florida. He broke into my house and chased me into my bedroom, then spent 10 minutes shouting through my locked bedroom door that I should come out and have a reasonable conversation with him. Adult to adult. This is almost exactly what an ex-boyfriend did to me in college. Please, I just want to talk to you. After smashing my bedroom window open in the middle of the night and trying to crawl through it. F no. Edit. I'm a gay guy, not a woman. I was responding to how similar the comment was to one of my experiences, not to the original post. He shoved me into a wall and busted my head open. I was taking a break at work behind the building listening to music and enjoying the breeze. and co-worker I constantly tried to avoid because he was a creep started asking me out. I'd already been irritated because of city customers and the overbearing heat inside. So instead of the usual brush off reply, I snapped at him and made it clear I was in no way interested, had a boyfriend whom I loved, and that he needed to get the F out of my personal space. I went to walk away and he grabbed my arm to twist me around trying to back me against the wall, and when I managed to finally rip my arm away and press him back to get him off me, he got pissed, shoved me. Back of my head hit the wall, split open about 1.5 inches, bled a lot, had to get about 7 stitches. He got fired and also arrested for assault. He tried to say I had hit him first, but luckily there was a camera around back that caught the whole thing. In high school I turned a guy down so he went around spreading rumors that he tried to F me, but my V was deformed and practically closed up. He spent the rest of the year talking shit about how nasty I was, unclean, unshaven, etc. Sometime about 5 years ago, he tried to add me on Facebook and I blocked him. F that guy. I spent months trying to convince people I knew how to wash my a-hole. I turned down a guy that was known for being the popular guy and I thought he was a bit of a dickhead. When he tried to kiss me I turned my head the other way, said I wasn't interested and walked off. He grabbed my hand, spat in my face and said I missed the best opportunity in my life and the only reason he tried to kiss me was because he pitied me. This makes me want to hit something. I'd gone out with a guy once that I'd met through a dating site, and we just didn't click. I told him exactly that, was very respectful of his feelings and wished him the best. He was not receptive at all. He called me a whore, told me that he was going to find where I lived and push me into oncoming traffic. Really awful things. He wouldn't stop texting me horrible stuff about how I was a gigantic B, a total CNT for leading him on, and that he hoped that someone me. I blocked his number, which thankfully stopped the messages, reported him on the dating app, and thankfully never heard from him again. It was legit one of the scariest frigging things. Dude was unhinged. Guy asked me out during an Uber pool ride. I told him I wasn't interested and he started moving closer and asking me why I wasn't interested and what was wrong with him. It was uncomfortable to say the least. My Uber driver, for some reason, thought it was hilarious to see me pressed against the door to try and get away from this random guy invading my personal space. Thankfully no one has threatened my life. I also once had a guy send me hundreds of text messages calling me all kinds of names, cursing me out and threatening me because I didn't have sex with him after our entirely lackluster first and last date. I didn't even bother reading beyond the first 50, just let him go on and on until I blocked and mass deleted. Still, it was nuts. I've had this happen too. He then reappeared in my life as a stalker a few months later. Chased my car down the major city street as I drove away, running after me until he collapsed in the road. Called me dozens of times, eventually blaming everyone from my little brother to my dentist for breaking us up. Then flew to his hometown the next day and committed suicide. His extreme clinginess and jealousy was the reason for my decision to take a break, and though clearly I made the right decision, I felt terribly guilty for years. Edit. Details edit 2. It's been 20+ years. I'm fine and happily married now. Thank you for all the supportive and thoughtful responses. Must have been one hell of a dentist. He killed a stray cat that he found was taking shelter in his basement. He later told me it was my fault and that I had caused him to do it. I wish he would have just threatened me directly or started some bullshit rumors, not kill an innocent animal over it. Hopefully he'll be haunted by that cat and it will knock over things in his house at night for all of eternity, ensuring he never gets a decent sleep and constantly thinks someone in his home. Back in high school, he pretended to want the same friendship I was looking for. He ended up locking me in his room, threw my phone out of reach, and sexually assaulted me until I worked my way free. As I sat in my car, he casually walked out, handed me my phone, telling me he'd text me later, and I got to learn to live with him in classes while he acted like nothing ever happened. Went into a gas station to get my mom some lottery tickets and the cashier asks for my ID. While holding my ID, he begins questioning my marital status among other personal details. I told him I wasn't interested and paid. He gives me my ID back. I go to the car, Started up and begin to tell my little sister what happened as she was waiting in the car, and she starts yelling that someone is coming over. Now the cashier is tapping my window and yelling, "Are we friends?" I put the car in reverse and drove away. While I don't know for certain who did it, the next day I had my tire slashed. I was told that the way my tire looked seemed like it was most likely intentional. Unfortunately, this was like 8 years ago, so I no longer have the picture of the tire. As a precaution, I had some of my male friends go by and tell him to leave me alone. I never went back to that gas station and didn't have any issues with the guy after that. The worst part was I was 18, and when I told my mom what happened regarding the guy harassing me, she didn't believe me. F you, Bill. You're single because you're a creep.